Put down your baby and pick up your beer. Dad Jokes is back for another episode. I'm Jerry, joined here by Brandon. And you know what, Brandon? Normally I say that, and I don't have a beer in my hand. And today I don't have a beer in my hand, but I do have some bourbon. I got some Woodford Reserve I'm drinking tonight because I just got home from work. Yeah, and it felt like I needed some Woodford Reserve. So that's what I got in my hand. You got anything in your hand, boss?
I don't have anything right now, but give me about probably 35 minutes, and I will probably be sipping. I might go with some tequila today.
Oh, is it the tequila that we tried the other day?
It is the tequila we tried the other day. I might sip on some Casamigos during our we have book club in just a little bit.
We do. This is
as if we weren't nerded out enough.
We do. We got a lot of time together. We spent work together, then we got podcast, and then book club. So it's a lot of Jerry Brandon time today. I don't know if I can handle it.
It'll be Jerry Brandon, Bryce, and a couple other guys. I'll have Bryce the entire time with book club.
Well, usually sometimes now when we record, you say, hey, if you hear something, it's Bryce maybe here. But today you might hear something on my end because my dog apparently got no attention today while I was at work because she is like in my lap with toys every 5 minutes trying to get me to play with her. So if you hear some jingling, it's just Raja being Raja, so don't mind that at home.
Well, they got to know Raja a little bit in a couple episodes ago, so
yeah, I think
it's a familiar sound.
Raja knows now that everyone knows who she is, so she wants to be part of the podcast. I think that's just her way of trying to be a part of the podcast now. So I don't know that I love Raja. It, but she does.
Well, we welcome Raja. I love Raja.
So today, Brandon, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about a birth plan, Jerry.
Birth
how
plans.
To create one, how to set it up.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie to you. Birth plan's not the most exciting topic on paper. It doesn't sound great, but it's very important, and there's a lot of things that you want to know, especially as dads, because I think a lot of people have heard of it before, but at least myself, I didn't know a lot about them. And so if you're educated, you know what they are, then you can kind of best decide how to use them for you and your partner in the pregnancy stage. So I think we're going to go through some details of what they are, how you can make one, why it might be necessary, why it might not be, and then you guys can make the decisions for yourself of what you might want to do with that. But nothing else, just a place where we can talk about what they are, Brandon, because like I said, there's not a lot of information out there unless, you're going through it.
Yeah, without question. And as you, also, side note, I'm going to get serious in a second, but I listen back to every single one of our podcasts, and if I keep saying without question, I think I might lose my mind. That's become a phrase that I say all the time. So I'm going to try to work on that a little bit.
Without question is a phrase you say all the time.
Yeah, without question I do. So we'll see how many times. Maybe we play a Dad Jokes drinking game, and if you go back and listen to a few episodes, so take a shot every time I say without question.
Well, I'm drinking bourbon, so let's not do it tonight.
Without question.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think ultimately it's something to help use as a guide. It may not be, and we're saying this, but we might get to the end of this episode and think it was our most exciting episode. On paper, it's not, but I think it's one of the most critical. And whether you're writing something down or just using this to spark a conversation with your partner, these are very important things that you really need to talk about beforehand.
Yes, Brandon. Before we get more into detail on that, as always, let's start with a dad joke. So, are you ready?
I'm waiting with bated breath, Jerry.
With bated breath. We still got to get that on a T-shirt. That's a great T-shirt.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, when does a joke become a dad joke?
Oh. I have no idea. I don't even have a guess.
When it becomes apparent. That's a pretty good one.
Pretty clever.
With the title. So there's a couple that are out there that aren't great for questions, so I might have to start bringing those in. But that one I thought was topical and good, so not a bad way to start the show off.
I'm not mad at it. I got a little guest dad joke coming for you later on today.
Oh, I'm waiting with bated breath.
Oh, perfect.
So, Brandon, what's going on in the Banks household the last few days?
Well, yesterday, Bryce, I know the last time we talked, he was coming up on his being 2 months old, or actually I think he was. And yesterday was his official appointment with the pediatrician for his 2 month appointment. So he got his first round of shots. He got 3 shots, and 2 in one leg, 1 in the other, and then like a topical. They use like a squirter type syringe and basically put it in his mouth. So that was a little nerve wracking for mom and dad. I'm good with like needles and all that. So is she, but it's always a little different when you see it happen to someone else that you love. But he took it like a champ. There were a few tears shed. He was a little irritable that day, and we were worried because he was so irritable. He slept pretty well that day. We were worried that night or last night was going to be pretty rough, and he actually slept pretty well. No complaints, and he's good today. He's just normal, like happy 95% of the day and fussy the other 5%.
So rougher for mom and dad than it was for Bryce, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. I almost said it, but I'm not. But it definitely, it definitely was a little rougher for him. And then at the appointment, it was one thing I'll credit our doctor's office is we normally are in and out of there pretty quick. But we had a few questions about his breathing. As a new parent, you hear weird things all the time. You don't know what's normal, what's not. So I recorded a video the night before, and it turned out to be nothing, but the nurses and then like the nurse's assistant were interested a little bit, and they went and grabbed the doctor. So made me feel better having 3 different people look at it. They determined it really wasn't much of anything to be worried about, but it's something we'll monitor going forward. I think he might have allergies, actually, like his dad. Only thing he got from me.
Lucky him. Yeah, our household this last few days, nothing too crazy. Macy went to a bachelorette party, last weekend, which, is 8.5 months.
She turned up a little bit?
Super fun, I know. So she did that. That was, good. So she was out of the house, and then, she's been working a lot. She's working right up until the birth because of maternity leave stuff, which is a little nerve-wracking, but at the same time, she works, in pediatrics at a hospital. Literally down the hallway is where we're going to be for the actual birth. So if something does happen, she's at the right place, but I don't love her being on her feet for 12, 13 hours. But we're making do. She's getting through. We're getting closer and closer. The bachelorette party she did go to is for the wedding that Brandon and I am performing and that she is standing up in a week before our due date. So that is getting very close and is kind of exciting and a little nerve-wracking for how that's going to go. But I'm excited for that. So we're getting closer and closer to that date.
That's great. Right. When you say performing, are you like tap dancing, singing, playing an instrument?
Well, I can't, reveal anything because they listen to this, but, there might be a skit in there or two. Who knows?
Oh, okay.
We'll see what happens.
Perfect.
But
most
yeah.
People call it officiating.
Officiating, performing, whatever.
You're a dancer, not a referee. I get it.
So basically, though, a lot of people are asking me right now, you getting nervous? Are you ready? And honestly, I'm not nervous. I'm anxious is what I would say. Brandon, I'm a planner. I like to know when things are happening. I like to have things in a certain order. And we have a due date, but the due date, I think I told you before, it's like 6% of people have their baby on their actual due date. Yep. So not knowing when it's going to happen, knowing it could happen now, it could go long, it just makes me anxious, I don't think I'm nervous, but I am anxious. So it's every day kind of goes by, and I'm just waiting for it to happen. So I'm getting excited, but mostly just anxious right now, if that makes sense.
That's the part of it makes complete sense, and that's the part of the process that I had, but to a different degree, because we were, and this correlates to what we're talking about today, but we were planned, like pretty much to a T. We knew when we were going in. Things changed in that plan, but we didn't really have the it could be any day now type feeling. Really, we were basically looking forward to a specific day to go in, and then we knew we would allegedly come out with the baby. It might have taken a couple times, but.
Yeah, you guys knew twice, so
yeah, we did.
I swear, I learned a lot from your guys' pregnancy because I didn't know that was a thing. I know we talked about it in a previous podcast, but I guess that I'll give you props because that would have been tough. Like, hey, this is when it's going to happen, and then psych, nope, it's another week. So
it wasn't how I would advise things to go, but
it's all good now though.
Roll with the punches.
Well, and that's the I'll kind of transition into the birth plan, which is what we're going to start talking about. But the ironic part about it is if you think of the term birth plan, it's just funny because the one thing that's almost certain about birth is that your plan is pretty much not going to happen according to your plan. Everyone who's given birth and tells the stories always talks about how things don't go the way you think they're going to go. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have a plan. it doesn't mean that you shouldn't talk about things. And I think that's the first thing I want to talk about, Brandon, is for me, first of all, a birth plan, for those of you that don't know, is basically a document that you and your partner put together that says how you want the birth to go. Like in an ideal situation, this is what you want for the birth of your child. And we'll go through exactly what's on there, but that's what the birth plan is. And what it's supposed to be is for the doctors and for those taking care of the baby, midwives, and also for yourselves. But for me, the big thing with a birth plan, and the reason why I think it's important, is not so much for the doctors, but it's for each other. Because you might think that you and your wife are on the same page, and you might say, yeah, I know what she wants, and she knows what she wants, and when we get there, everything's going to be fine. But then you start going through these questions on a birth plan, or these points, these bullet points, and you go, wow, I didn't know that that's what she wanted or didn't want. And so it's important to have those conversations, and it's just really a good format to have those conversations. And Brandon, do you agree?
Yeah, and it really puts into paper form or in organization exactly what you said, just talking it out with your partner first. And it is something that I've seen in our research that some nurses they say will roll their eyes because some people walk in with a 6-page, 7-page birth plan and have everything planned out to a T. And one thing that stuck with me both before we had Bryce and then in doing research for this is to look at this more as birth preferences over birth plan, because you can have a game plan of what's going on. If we're using a sports reference, the game plan is in place, but you still got another team. This might be a horrible analogy, but I'm gonna keep going with it. I don't know who the other team is in this scenario, but ultimately things don't always go according to plan and with the game plan, and you have to audible and make adjustments. And you want to have an idea and know what you want, but also the thing I like most about this is that it introduces potential other possibilities that you can at least research and be prepared for if they come your way.
Yeah, so talking about a birth plan, if you guys are like, okay, where do I go or how do I make one of these birth plans? There's so many templates out there and resources that make it super, super easy for you. It's not complicated. One of the first places that I saw it was in the book that I'm reading, The Birth Partner, which is a very, very popular book. They literally walk through what a birth plan is and different things that you can put on the birth plan. But if you want to Google birth plan, there's literally birthplan.com, and there's like a ton of different places where you can print them out, fill them out by hand, or you can go in there and fill them out on the computer, and it'll walk through a bunch of things. But the common things that are on a birth plan are things such as, where do you want to have the baby? Do you want to have it at the hospital? Do you want to have it at home? Do you want to have it at a clinic? Like, where do you want to have the baby? Other things on a birth plan. What are your feelings on medication? Do you want a medicated birth, a non-medicated birth? C-section, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on how you want the room to be? Do you want it to be dim and quiet? And do you want to move around? Do you want it to be, have people in there? Who do you want in there? Lots of different questions it's going to walk you through. And then you can put on there what's important. And some things you might not care or might not have an opinion on, and that's okay too. Like, you know what? I'm good with whatever the doctor recommends in that situation. Or, that's something I want to decide while I'm going through it. But it starts these conversations to get you thinking about those types of things. So for us, we did have conversations about the birth plan coming from the book that I was reading, but also the classes we did on hypnobirthing. They had birth plan printed out as part of the class itself too, that we looked at. The one we ultimately filled out though, Brandon, was from Tula Mama. Did you guys fill one out, and where did you fill one out from?
So we went over one and physically had it and talked it over ourselves, but we didn't turn it. I'll make it sound like an assignment. We didn't turn it in with the nurse. We knew exactly what we wanted, and we'll kind of go through ours as well. But so it was filled out, but not utilized as far as handing it to the nurse.
Yeah, so that's something that I mentioned, I think one of our very first episodes, is when I first read about birth plans, is that I got advice from one of these books that basically said that, hey, a birth plan is a great thing to do, but it's something that you should keep in your pocket, keep with you, and really you don't need to give to the medical professionals. One, they've probably already talked to you about this. Like, I know the midwives have already asked the questions to us of what you prefer, which is kind of their birth plan. But two, sometimes when you hand it to medical professionals, it's like almost, well, one, that you're trying to step on their toes, but two, then they don't know how much variation there is and whatnot. So if you know the birth plan, your partner knows the birth plan, you can express what it is to them without it having to be in black and white, because things can change on the fly. So that's to say, not to say that you can't go and give it to a nurse, give it to a doctor. If you're comfortable with that, by all means do that. That's just something that we have one now, but we probably aren't going to give it to anyone either. But again, if I need to reference it because Macy's in a lot of pain during birth or anything, I can kind of go back and look at exactly what we talked about and refresh my memory.
Exactly. And that's exactly how we use it. And we went in, I don't know if we want to get here yet, but we went in expecting I was told specifically not to call it a natural birth, but I forgot what I'm supposed to call it. So we weren't going in looking, so I apologize. We're going in not looking for a C-section, and that's how we walked out.
A vaginal birth?
There we go. That's probably the clinical way to put it.
Yeah. I've seen it on enough documents lately to know that's what they call it.
Yeah. Thank you.
So speaking of two, I know I mentioned it, but the hypnobirthing classes we did take, and that has a birth plan, that's the Positive Birth Company. So if you want to look that up, or if you're interested in hypnobirthing, that is a great resource as well to anyone that's looking. But again, there's a birth plan in there. She even talks about in her classes how to fill that out and what you might want to put in there. But a big thing that I've heard in birth plans, Brandon, and it makes sense, is if you talk about the 5 senses, right? So what do you want it to look like? What do you want the room to smell like, to feel like? As weird as it sounds, all those things matter. Even taste, like what do you want for food? Do you want water? Do you want ice chips? Do you want other drinks that are okay to have in the room? So all those things are things to talk about. 5 senses is a good place to start.
Yeah, and the benefit from a dad perspective, if we're going over this beforehand, which we should be, and there's going to be times where your wife may or may not be medicated, may be dealing with lack of sleep. And if you can help in any way you already know what she wants in these situations because you guys have discussed it, that goes a long way.
Yeah, and one recommendation I would make too is if you do a birth plan online or you print it out, go through it with your partner, but have them fill it out. Let them physically do the filling out and the writing because they're the ones going through it. You don't want to misinterpret anything. So let them actually be the ones to fill it out.
AKA don't get yourself in trouble, guys.
Yeah, you got literally written proof of what they told you to do. It's a get out of jail free card. Maybe not. But seriously though, like you might think she's talking about one thing and then you go, oh, that's not what you wrote down. So I do recommend that. But Brandon, why don't you take us through a little bit of your guys' birth plan and then how you utilize it during the birth of Bryce?
Yeah, so a few things that we highlighted. Number one was, and I'm just kind of taking you through categories, and then we'll get into it a little bit. Our pain management plan. I'm saying I understand that, especially with pain management, I had zero to do with that, or the actual feeling of the pain.
Without question.
There we go. We're still playing a drinking game. We actually discussed, and a part of the written birth plan was who's going to be in the room. Now, depending on when you're listening to this, you may or may not be allowed more. Your partner may be allowed in the room with you. Your partner and others may be allowed in the room with you. We're still hopefully towards the end, but going through COVID. So for us, it was myself was allowed in the room, and then she had one other guest that could be on the list, basically. But that individual, it was supposed to be that only one of us could be like in the hospital room at a time with her. But we had that as a part of it. We had preferences for labor. Is how we put it on the birth plan. So that's a vaginal birth. Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. It is on my paper, by the way, so I did confirm that is correct.
Oh, that's perfect. Vaginal birth versus a C-section and potentially even a planned C-section. Medical intervention preferences. So one thing that they get into, during a vaginal birth, you have options like using like forceps. They have a procedure that will create basically a tear without the woman tearing naturally.
Can you say that word?
I cannot say that word, which is why I'm going. It's like you read my mind.
I did, because I can't say it either. Yeah. And Macy, obviously being a medical professional, says it every time, and I mess it up every time.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try. You can Google it and figure it out, guys. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes.
It starts with an E, just so you know.
And it's not epidural.
No, it's not.
I can say that. And so determining what, if you get to that step, how far would you go along that process? And then with that, how many of those medical interventions are you willing to go through before you potentially head towards a C-section, if that's an option? And then we had things like names. When we first started discussing it, we weren't locked in on one. So we anticipated we would be, but we did have a couple of options there. And then a big thing as well was for after delivery. So who's cutting the cord, skin to skin contact, how is the baby eating? So are we exclusively breastfeeding? Are we willing to supplement? Things like that as well. So that's the gist of a lot of our birth plan. We can get more in depth into what we actually decided on each step, but what does yours look like, Jerry?
Yeah, the one, like I said, that we ended up going with, and we've talked about a lot, so we had like a really good, I guess, vocal or non-written down one, but the one we did that was written out, like I said, was from tulamama.com, tulamama.com.
And just so everyone knows, Jerry is holding a resume paper up with his birth plan.
And well, the nice thing about it, though, like a resume, Brandon, it is one page, exactly. And it kind of walks you through. But it goes through, again, what do you want the atmosphere to be like? And it asks like 10 questions, and you can put check marks by them or not. Pain management. During the delivery, what kind of delivery do you want? Do you want different positions? Do you prefer during labor? Fetal monitoring. That's a big thing. Do you want fetal monitoring or not? Some people like that because they feel better about hearing the baby's heart rate and stuff. Other people hate it because if it doesn't sounds, crazy or goes off or isn't showing up right, they freak out and think something's wrong with the baby. And there's some data out there. I've read a lot of data. Some of them are for it. Some of them are against it. So there's some controversy over how effective that is too.
That sound brought me comfort. That's something we haven't talked about, but
Macy wants it as well because she thinks it'll bring her comfort. But there's people on the other end of the spectrum as well. Cord clamping. How long do you want to wait before that? A lot of people have a lot of benefits in it. Also, umbilical cord being cut. Are you going to save the placenta? What are you going to do with the placenta? That's a big thing for certain people, especially in certain cultures. And then, like you said, after the birth's a big thing. What's going to happen? Are you going to try to get skin to skin as quickly as possible? Do you want certain things to be done with the baby first? Are you trying to breastfeed right away? Like you said, will you supplement? And then is there anything, also some stuff on here is like medical stuff. Do you have any of these symptoms? Is there anything that you're worried about here? Circumcision. Do you want circumcision for your baby or not? This is something that is very, I don't want to say controversial, but there's people that are really strong on one side or the other and people that don't
I'd
care.
say it's controversial.
So, it's important to have a discussion with your spouse on it. Luckily, me and Macy are on the same page, and there wasn't really any question there, but I know that people can be on opposite ends of it. And it is ironic, not to get too much into that detail, Brandon, but for like a mostly cosmetic thing that people are so, for or against it. It's just
correct.
It's interesting to me. But that's kind of our birth plan on paper.
We may have to have an episode on circumcision.
Especially if I have a boy.
Maybe we talk about it today.
Especially if we have a boy, because I think we might be on opposite ends, Brandon. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think we are.
Also, medications for the baby too. There's I know they give them vitamin K, like the hepatitis B vaccine, eye ointment, a couple different things, and some people don't want that. So those are things that if you don't want, you need to definitely specify. And then if you do want, you need to let them know as well. So there's something I'm trying to think. Don't some people store the blood or the stem cells or something from the umbilical cord too? That's another thing.
The stem cells from the umbilical cord.
Yeah, you can either donate them or you can store them because there's some potential benefits to the baby later in life if they have certain diseases and whatnot. So some people will pay to store those, which, again, you need to let them know if you want to do that or not. Those are all things that, need to be talked about.
Yeah. And so digging into that just a little bit, and I'll go pretty quickly, but our birth plan for pain relief, we were, and I'm saying we again, but we knew that an epidural would come into play, and we were all about it. My wife basically said, I do not want to feel the pain that I know is coming. And we did extensive research on the pros and cons of it. And for us, that was the decision ultimately that we were going with if we ended up having a vaginal birth. Ended up having a spinal block, which is similar but not exactly the same. So that was an adjustment that was made there. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we were scheduled for an induction and a vaginal birth. We took that very far along in the process as far as my wife is concerned. She was having contractions for about half a day. But ultimately, body didn't completely cooperate, and we left after a couple of days being in the hospital, came back a few days later to try the induction process again. At that point, it was evident that he wasn't coming naturally, and we adjusted the game plan and ended up going with the C-section. And that was one thing that we had talked about, the C-section, but we hadn't, and we'd done research on it, but we almost hadn't really considered that as a possibility, even though we talked about it. So it was almost a blessing in disguise that we left and came back. It was annoying, and my wife is going to listen to this and say, "Blessing in disguise, you can
kiss something,
kiss it where the good Lord split you," however it goes. But it did give us more of an opportunity to understand that was a real possibility in those days between the induction. And then a couple quick hits after the delivery. I was supposed to be cutting the cord. Things got a little hairy in the delivery room, and they were, and this is why preferences is key. Number one on our list is baby's health. I think that's number one on probably everyone who's listening to this. So, cutting the cord, I wanted to do. Guess what? Had a C-section. There was some concern in the immediacy after he was delivered. Cord got cut. I wasn't the one that cut it. I haven't cried a tear about that. Skin-to-skin contact. Interestingly enough, I was his first skin-to-skin contact. My wife was still coming into the room from the OR. They had to obviously sew things back up. So once Bryce and I were waiting in the room for her, when she got there, I happened to be the first person who he had skin-to-skin contact with. And then we decided to breastfeed. So at the hospital, he got an immediate latch. So that was their first skin-to-skin. And from there, we actually, here's another adjustment. He had a tongue tie, so he had that initial latch, but wasn't getting enough. So we transitioned to some formula and breastfeeding while we were in the hospital. And he got a little spoiled by the bottle, so breastfeeding became a little difficult. But after a week or so, his tongue got clipped, and we were back to exclusively breastfeeding at that point. And I can go on through the list that we continue. But what are some quick hits on yours, Jerry?
Well, I think yours speaks to the fact that the best laid plans don't always happen,
exactly.
And that's kind of the point, is you want to have a plan, but you need to be flexible. And I think for me, as someone that's a big planner and very analytical and likes things done a certain way, that's why I haven't been super big into the birth plan or over analyzing it, because I know things are probably going to go differently. I know we're going to have to adjust on the fly, and I trust the medical professionals, but I do need to know some of Macy's preferences. So those are the conversations that we've had. So that's the big thing, is even if you have this birth plan, you got to understand there's lots of situations. And some of these books will bring you through a ton of situations, even some that you probably don't want to talk about, to be honest with you. But it brings those up so that if you need to have those tough conversations or those weird conversations, you should have them now. So if it does happen, you can say, okay, I know this is what she would want. This is what we want.
Exactly.
So, you know, I know like Macy, she wants obviously a vaginal birth. I know that she does not want an epidural. She's terrified of them. It's not like she has anything against people that get them. She's just terrified of them herself. She's okay with other medication. She just doesn't want an epidural unless absolutely necessary. I know that she wants, you know, what reason we're going to the midwives is she wants to use different positions. She's really big into music, maybe even using the shower. She wants to be up and moving.
Can I pick the playlist, Jerry?
She's got a playlist. I keep asking her. I don't think I've heard it. So it'll be interesting. I'm sure I'll hear lots of it because birth's not usually fast.
I got some suggestions. Little John.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, exactly. But yeah, and obviously she wants that skin to skin right away afterwards. We understand that a C-section, if it's necessary, then okay, but we want it to be necessary. Like the big thing, what we've read through some of our classes and some of the things that we've gone through is like asking the question, what if we do nothing? Or what if we wait? Like, so sometimes like a medical professional will be like, okay, at this point in time, you know, we might want to do a C-section. Okay, one, why? But two, what if we wait a little bit longer to see? You know, and those are the questions you need to have, because if a C-section makes sense, great, but does it make sense? And so asking those questions, making sure that there's a reason behind it other than just, well, we want to hurry it up, you know, because you don't want to be at the mercy of them, which the hospital we're going to is great. The midwives program, honestly, is more well-known for not trying to push stuff like that. So I'm not too worried about it. But again, knowing her preferences, our preference is to, you know, try to do it vaginally, trying to doing it, you know, kind of more let her body do what it was designed to do type of thing, I guess, you know.
And one quick thing on that, we deliver our baby at the same hospital. The midwives are not who we use, even though one ended up coming in to help at one point. The nurses there to a woman all made sure we knew that at every point we were the ones who were in control. And there was never a question on, what if we wait was an option we knew we had before we went in. But we never felt like we were put in a position where things were being rushed either. So that was a very comfortable experience, because I know that's not how it always goes. But Jerry hit the nail on the head, not just in a pregnancy, but in your healthcare in general. Remember, you're your best advocate, and ultimately the buck stops with you, and you need to get all your questions answered before you proceed.
Yeah. So what I would recommend is go out there, look up a number of different birth plans, because everyone's going to have some different things on there. Read about them a little bit more, and then have those discussions. Find one you like, fill it out, and then decide whether you want to give it to people or not. Some people even use birth plans as a way to thank the nurses beforehand. Like, hey, I want to thank you for everything, for what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying blah, 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 but you know what I mean? Like, they'll actually write personal notes to people and stuff, like, especially if they've been involved with the process beforehand. So again, go through it, do the research. It's more or less, to me, conversation starters. And you don't, as a dad, the worst thing in the world, or as a husband even, I don't want to be in that hospital, have a question asked to me, Macy not being able to answer, and me not knowing what she would want. I don't want to have to answer for her. I want to know exactly what she thinks and how she would answer, so that I have her best interest at heart and our baby's best interest at heart.
Yeah, it takes some of the pressure out of a pressure-filled situation. It's ultimately is what we're supposed to be doing in that moment.
Exactly. So, birth plans, find one out there. Do what you can on there. If anyone has any good resources on those two, or really likes one, make sure you let us know. Comment on our stuff and post it there. You know, there's a lot of good ones out there. They're all very similar, but there's some good, easy to fill out ones, and there's some ones that ask more in-depth questions. You can get really technical, like Brandon said. You could have a 6-page one if you wanted to. And you can have a 1-page one, like a resume. So whatever you want to do, it's your guys' plan. And if nothing else, though, guys, it's like 90% hers, 10% yours. You're more like just like the how can I help part of it. So you want the one that she's comfortable with. Let me preface that. So.
Exactly. And to the 6-page one, the nurses might kill you if you do that, and they probably will roll your eyes. So you can do it, but maybe make it 3 or 4.
Yes.
Preferably 1.
So Brandon, let's go on to a dad joke. I see you're pulling something up there.
I got this one on my phone, Jerry. It was texted over to me.
Texted from who?
A mutual friend of ours, Sydney Hargrave.
Oh, okay.
Used to work at the dealership.
I was going to say a former employee.
Jerry, I believe you hired her, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. So this joke is for you. And she specifically said, can't wait to hear Jerry not laugh at it.
Oh,
but I think
gosh.
your listeners will love it. Okay. Why do fish live in salt water?
I don't know.
Because pepper makes them sneeze.
What?
Because pepper makes them sneeze.
I don't get it.
Why do fish live in salt water
Because pepper makes
instead
them
of pepper
sneeze.
water?
I get it, but like, wah, wah, wah.
Oh, Sydney, no. I think if I wouldn't have told you that it came from somebody we knew, we might have got a genuine reaction. I think
Maybe.
you're going a little hard on the joke.
Okay, well, you know what? It's okay. I appreciate the fact that people are giving us some jokes. I've had some people come in and contribute some too, but I get a lot. I get a lot. I mean, as far as dad jokes go, maybe it's a great dad joke because usually when people say dad jokes, they don't get a lot of laughs. So that was a different.
I'm laughing
one.
at your reaction right now. I thought the joke was very funny.
I think I was more. Well, one, it threw me off because you sneezed. And anyone who knows Brandon knows he has the worst sneeze in the entire world. So it was very fake because Brandon's sneeze sounds like he's like trying to hold back every urge in his body from actually sneezing. And he does it like 17 times in a row. It's like,
My record is actually 16 in sixth grade social studies with Mr. Haney. Thank you, Brindle.
if there was ever a man that didn't match his sneeze, it's you, Brandon Banks. So I just want to let everyone know that threw
It's
me
a
off too.
high-pitched, quick whine is what it is. It's fine.
I like it.
I actually sneezed a couple times in his episode. I just muted my mic.
Yeah, you
Jerry,
did. I
sending
saw you.
people home.
All right. Well, one, I'm excited because Brandon, coming up on our next episode, we're going to have another guest on the show, someone that you referenced in a previous episode. So I'm excited to have him on the show, and we're going to talk about traveling
Hen dog?
with. Yeah, you did mention
I thought we were
in
talking about
reference
hen
to hen dog, but we're going to talk about traveling with a baby. And he is someone who has done it a number of times. So that is an exciting topic, something that's topical, something that might be important to you. So we're going to go through that. But until that episode, make sure you go on, you like our Facebook page, you follow us on Instagram, you write a review for us on Apple Podcasts, even if you don't listen to us on Apple, because I know some people do Spotify and other devices. But if there's a way you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, it would mean a lot. We appreciate you guys. Also, comment, text us, let us know how you feel. It means a lot to us. I just sent Brandon a couple reviews today that we got, and it does. It means a lot to us.
They're
we read them
great.
all. It's super, super cool to see that. It honestly is the reason that we're doing this. So thank you all for your support. And, next episode, Brandon, I'm excited. So
I am too.
until next time, I'm Jerry here with Brandon, and you've been listening to Dad Jokes.
Achoo!